Welcome to the App in Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast.
For so many mobile app developers, it's an all or nothing battle out there in the App Store.
This App in Top podcast is your mobile app marketing advantage.
Let's get that new app of yours moving to the top.
This is the App in Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast.
And now your host, Michael Bauer.
Welcome. This is the App in Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast, produced by appintop.com. You can visit our daily blog at blog.appintop.com, and also make sure you track us down at facebook.com/appintop. And since we are on Twitter, feel free to reach out, comments, questions, thoughts at appintop_com, appintop_com. As practice shows, the most popular ways for players to find new games is to look at the top of the charts in the app stores. The competition for those prime positions in the app store ratings is at an all-time high. Today, we speak with Scott Prather, the Vice President of Business Development at PlayPhone, to learn about how gaming networks can enable game developers to market their games outside of said app store. Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
No, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
If you would, please give us a brief overview of PlayPhone and what kind of problems it's solving right now.
So PlayPhone came about when we looked at the marketplace. As you mentioned, it's extremely crowded. For a lot of the developers that are coming into the space now, it's near impossible to generate the marketing campaigns that a very large company, that some of these multi-billion-dollar companies can generate. So PlayPhone basically put together a concept that was social in its core, and it gives people the opportunity to kind of have a equal playing field with some of these big guys. So basically, what we did, we put together a mobile game store for carriers. So back in the old days, the dinosaur days of flip phones and Motorola Razors, the operators kind of ruled the roost. So they had their own stores. All the billing went through their systems. And we saw a real advantage to that. It eliminated a lot of the issues that we're seeing now. So we put together a social store. And we partner with some of the leading operators, some of the leading carriers in the world, to basically put a store together and kind of go back to the way it was. So we partner right now with Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, a bunch of prepaid brands, with Boost Mobile. And then across the globe with Singtel is one of our key partners throughout Southeast Asia and Australia. So Singtel, Telkomsel, Vivo, Claro, and TIM down in Brazil. So we work with a lot of the operators to kind of enable their customers to find the best games, and then also game developers have a chance to get the attention of those customers.
Well, how would a mobile game developer get their game to PlayPhone, for instance? What are the conditions, the commission, revenue share that goes into PlayPhone and the payment provider?
So it's fairly easy. I mean, our solution, we try to get it as close to real time as possible. We have a developer portal that's set up on our website. It's fairly simple. We have a fairly small SDK that enables all the social features that I spoke about earlier, the social features that are built into the store itself, and then, of course, the carrier billing. So the SDK itself is, I think, 80K. It's relatively small, fairly painless to enable, and that's all available today.
And how many active daily users do you have? Can you share some of those numbers with us?
So most of our stores have been live for under a year. So we're at this point, okay. Yeah, we're holding off releasing metrics until we kind of have a more broad picture.
But with what you've got so far at this point, do you feel like you've accomplished what you've set out to?
It's still very early days, but we're cautiously optimistic. I mean, the conversion rates that we're seeing using operator billing are significantly higher than the credit card usage that and purchasing that we're seeing on Google Play.
Well, and with this being so new, if you will, you've got 500 games on PlayPhone now, which isn't much compared to the millions available at the app stores, right? But how do users discover mobile games on PlayPhone?
So we actually have over 1,000 games now. So
over 1,000, nice.
Yeah, by the time that the research pulled the 500 number, we've actually grown pretty considerably. So what we focused on is less kind of bulk content and more curated content. So, frankly, we don't. Without sounding crude, we try to be less kind of farts and flashlights and more very quality content. If you look in, there is millions and millions of apps in Google Store and an Apple Store, but unfortunately, a great deal of them are clones, or they're what we call ghosts, which is they only show up if you actively search for them. They're not really going to be quality content. They're not going to be something that you or I could pick up and play and really enjoy and want to recommend to our friends. So PlayPhone, every single game that comes into the system, we go through and we play. We make sure that the game is quality. We want to make sure that the experience is better. So any game that a player downloads, we want it to be a good game versus just a download.
So you guys have your own sort of filter at the get-go, and then from there, in regards to people looking for games, is it through sort of top ranks, featuring? How would I be looking? How would I find the selection of game that I'm looking for?
So there's a bunch of social features built throughout the store that helps people find content. So stuff, we incorporate social networks so people can see what games their friends are playing. We actually have a recommendation engine that's built into the system itself. So it'll take into account the games that you've downloaded as well as the games that your friends have downloaded. So there's a social layer on top of that. But then, of course, we have the usual, featuring and top games and top genres and trending games and areas where if a game gets really hot and lots of people are downloading it, we'll put it to the top of trending. So there's a lot of kind of traditional ways that developers can get featured on top of kind of the built-in social features.
What are some of the examples of the top trending games right now?
Oh boy! So we've had a lot of success with some of the smaller guys. So as I mentioned, as we move around the globe, what we've discovered is local content really, really is king. If you move into Indonesia, there's going to be Indonesian developers that make games that, frankly, you and I have never heard of. Card games, for example, those do exceptionally well. So it seems like as we move around the globe, local games do very well, in addition to the normal ones. So Shadow Blade, My Singing Monsters, stuff like that, Cut the Rope, kind of the games you'd expect do very well, and then, of course, local content.
How does the social network element affect how users discover games and spend money on them?
So that was the social piece was something that we built in from day one.
You knew from the get-go.
Yeah, so from the start, we show a standard set of here's the games that we feature, and that gets rotated through. But from there, the recommendation engine really starts to take charge, and that's one of the advantages of having a game store versus a games and app store. Is games are fairly specific. People that like particular types of games, they like those games. If I like playing racing games, showing me a casual one-click game, it's not going to do it for me. If you show me a bunch of racing games, more than likely I'm going to go and download those.
He is Scott Prather, Vice President of Business Development at PlayPhone, joining us here on the App and Top podcast. With your users, and again, I know we're looking at sort of less than a year's worth of information at this point, but at this point, can you tell if there's a split by platform, iOS, Android, online?
Right now we're predominantly Android, so the ability to kind of have a little bit more openness that Android provides us, we take advantage of. Of course, everything that goes through Apple has to go through Apple, so we have a pretty good split, but it's predominantly Android.
Gotcha. User metrics on PlayPhone, are they different than the user metrics in the App Store and Google Play?
Without kind of going into the specifics, like I said, we do see higher conversions. Just frankly, if you look at kind of the number of people that have phones. In the U.S., it's not going to be as much, but as you move around the globe, people that don't have credit cards, there's a lot of them. So being able to use that carrier billing is huge. Removing that need for a credit card is such a big advantage. It's just a big win, especially like I said, as you move to emerging countries and then also prepaid users.
It hits me as sort of just the clarity between, and this, I guess this is supposed to be localized to America, but being in a big city like New York City where you don't need to have the driver's license in order to get around, in the case of what you guys are doing, there's billing available out there. You don't need to have the credit card in order to make money.
That's exactly right. So if you look at places like Indonesia, there's a sub 2% credit card penetration, and even that number just skewed a little bit because the people that have them are going to have 3 or 4 of them. So the number of people that have them is far outweighed by the number of people that don't. So for us to go into a market like that, that's such an enormous market, that's been underserved because nobody could buy anything.
Yeah.
It's a real advantage to be able to put that right to your bill.
Well, like you said, sort of that localization and knowing your market is key in that point. What about some of the game analytics? What mechanisms do developers have to analyze their metrics, such as engagement, retention, sharing with PlayPhone environment?
So we got within our developer portal, we have a full suite of tools that are available. So things like session times, how often people are coming back, in-app purchase analysis, stuff like that. Where are people making these purchases? Where is it sticky? DAUs, MAUs, lifetime value, all that good stuff. We have that all available. It's really, if you're going to dig into it, it's fantastic to do. It gives you a lot of information right there at your fingertips.
What's one of the things that you've seen, Scott, right off the bat here in this year's period of time that has sort of surprised you? A shock, a statistic, an analytic that's sort of you said to yourself, wow, maybe I was expecting it, but not to this level?
I think one of the most surprising things is how quickly the market seems to be we kind of went through a period of extreme kind of rapid growth. It seems like everybody was starting to become, everybody was starting to make apps. And it seems like now the market's starting to kind of come back in on itself. So I'm kind of surprised by that. I mean, if you're looking at the amount of mergers and acquisitions that have occurred in the last 12 months, it's pretty startling. It's pretty shocking, especially within the industry as a whole, not just developers, but if you include, mobile marketing and ad companies and things of that nature, there's been a lot of companies combining forces.
Scott, we'll take a quick break here, and I want to come back with one reason why Apple may need to be looking over their shoulder when we return in moments with Scott Prather, VP of Business Development at PlayPhone, on the App in Top podcast.
This podcast is produced with support from App in Top, an automated mobile app marketing platform in App Store and Google Play.
This is the App in Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast. I'm Mike Bauer. Recently, CTO of Sacred Ducks Games, Andrew Martin, said of PlayPhone, quote, traditional app stores are flooded with apps, which makes game discovery difficult. By focusing on games only and by enabling friends to recommend games, PlayPhone greatly increases our discoverability. Scott Prather, the VP of Business Development at PlayPhone, joins us here on the App in Top podcast. Scott, through partnerships with carriers, PlayPhone has reached an installed base of 800 million users. It's already larger. And by the way, that number might be different already. It's already larger than iOS user base. Can you share some numbers on your active users? And do you think Apple should be concerned?
Actually, you're right. That number's well over a billion at this point.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
It seems like we're adding carriers and adding subscribers, and seems like we're doing that almost every week. It's a very busy time at PlayPhone. We're super excited. As I mentioned, like I said, most of the stores that we have are under a year old, so we're still holding off on that until we kind of get some further data. But to your larger point, I do think there is room for more than one distribution channel beyond kind of the Apple and the Google stores. What we've discovered is the more that these companies kind of take charge and be the only player in town, the more that they can make kind of large mistakes that hurt small developers. And those mistakes, if you're an EA, it's not as big a deal. But if you're a three-person shop that, making this one game is your livelihood and your life, having Apple only display the top 5 games that are doing, marketing, that really hurts. That really knocks people out of the industry.
Yeah, that uphill climb is such a battle that it doesn't seem like you could possibly be successful at any point, whereas what you guys are doing seems to not level the playing field, but certainly gain exposure.
It's the cream rises to the top. If you have a game that, it's a 3-person shop, but the game is fantastic, I'm just as likely to feature that as I am, the latest game from an EA or one of these really, enormous companies.
Do you have to deal with, and how do you deal with, and I guess the conflict of interest with Apple and Google, especially when the payments are done through carrier billing?
So the payments for in-app purchases and premium games are all made through the App Store, which they were downloaded from. So if the game is downloaded through Google, then of course we respect Google, and we love Google. They make a fantastic product, and we're really enjoying it. So if it goes through Google, then we absolutely respect their rules, and it uses Google billing. If the download occurs through a PlayPhone store, so if one of the preloaded apps that's up there, then the billing can flow through the carrier.
Gotcha. So there's very little impact as far as the way the PlayPhone app, when it's available in the App Store, there's very little impact to you directly.
No, so the PlayPhone app, actually, we work with operators, and it's available through preload. So somebody goes into a Verizon store and they pick up a new HTC One. The game store is already preloaded on there, so it doesn't require them to go out and do any acquisition or finding the game store or downloading anything of that nature. Literally, if you're a brand new customer, it can be as small as 3 clicks to be downloading a game, even if it's a premium game.
Now, with this in mind, when you guys began what's going on here with PlayPhone and the thought of carrier billing and that being sort of a big advantage, are payments more easy to make compared to the App Store or Google Play?
Absolutely. So with operator billing, it's near. I mean, it's as close to frictionless as possible. It's 1 click. Like I said, we're seeing conversion rates that are 3 to 5x, just because of that ease of conversion. So right now, for example, if somebody's in a game and they come and they say, "Hey, I want to buy a power up," they click buy. Right now, the experience is it drops them out, goes to the App Store, the Google Store, pops up a window, says, do you want to buy this? The experience is totally different. They went from a race car theme or whatever the game they were playing, Candy Crush, to going to the Google Store. Which is dramatically different. Whereas with our store, a window simply pops up in game, says, "Are you okay with this purchase going to your operator bill?" They hit OK, and they're back in the game. It's very, very quick, very, very frictionless.
Do you have a percentage, per se, of what you think the paying users on the PlayPhone network may be?
No, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I just couldn't tell you. Like I said, with the data still being so young,
Sure.
A lot of this stuff we just haven't dug into. I mean, when something's a month old, it's hard to kind of say this is a pattern.
Do you get a feeling that then, again, with all of this young information, do you get a feeling then that you've got players that are paying more frequently?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've worked with a bunch of developers that they give us kind of an apples to apples conversion, kind of no pun intended, of comparing kind of the game that they put up in one of the PlayPhone stores versus on Google Play. And what they're seeing is even at a higher price point, they're seeing people pay more often and continue to play.
I would imagine that the ease of this all, not only from the concept of the developer having the exposure that they're looking for going up against the big guys, but also the concept of being able to make these payments frictionless and with enough ease, you've got to see a big enough buzz and popularity that there have got to be, on a certain level, clones that are starting to do the same thing that you guys are doing.
Absolutely. I try and take it as a compliment.
Sure, because it's the sincerest form of flattery, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Especially if you move into some of these emerging markets. So, China's and Indonesia's and India's. You will see kind of clones pop up. In fact, some of them have even kind of replicated the look and feel. So yeah, we're very active as far as protecting kind of our investment and making sure that if somebody comes in and they want a good experience, we want to make sure that they're given the best experience. Going through a clone that maybe doesn't do something as well as we do that's not great, and that's certainly not a good experience for them.
Carriers have a massive installed user base, and they're looking to grow their revenue from charging commissions on in-app purchases, so they're certainly interested in getting PlayPhone more exposure. How do they market PlayPhone app to their users? How are they marketing you?
So one of the things that we're working very closely with those guys is, in addition to kind of their marketing. So for example, Singtel over in Singapore, they did a fantastic job when we launched. I mean, they really went above and beyond. So they had stuff like on the side of buses and
Nice.
banner ads around, and they had launch parties. At the launch of the Samsung S5, they had a team there that was showing people how to open up the store and how to get everything run. In fact, we work with them, and one of the things that we use is that we have a network-wide currency called Play Credits, and carriers are using that to kind of help people come in and be more active. So things the traditional you can get one game for free or things like that. We're actually able to extend that and say, you're going to get a certain number of play credits that you can either use to buy a premium game or to buy a power up in a game. There's a lot of functionality that they can do that's pretty cool as far as marketing.
And do you feel like you're getting that kind of response, that kind of excitement from other places as well?
We're seeing, like I said, from the developer side, we're seeing a pretty good response. We're very pleased with that. And then on the operator side, almost every operator that we deal with, they're very eager to continue to grow the product and expand it.
Any numbers you want to share with us at all?
Like I said, not yet.
Not yet.
We're like I said,
still in your infancy.
Yeah, stuff under a year that it doesn't really make a solid pattern. And as you can imagine, going from a carrier in the U.S. to a carrier in Indonesia, the experience and the purchase rates and all that are going to be wildly different.
A tad different, for sure, 100%. Yeah. All right, so is there another advantage to working with carriers as opposed to Apple and Google Play? We're going to find out in mere moments here. We come back more with Scott Prather, Vice President of Business Development at PlayPhone, in seconds on the App and Top podcast.
This podcast is produced with support from App and Top, an automated mobile app marketing platform in App Store and Google Play.
This indeed is the App and Top mobile app marketing podcast. I'm Michael Bauer, your host. We would love to hear from you, so please send us your comments via Facebook at facebook.com/appandtop, or make sure you tweet us your questions, comments, thoughts at appintop_com, appintop_com. As an app developer, you know that the competition for the prime positions in the App Store ratings is at an all-time high. Scott Prather, Vice President of Business Development at PlayPhone, joins us to explain how gaming networks can successfully enable game developers to market their games outside of the App Stores. Now, you have poker games on PlayPhone, as we know, and App Store casino games are some of the highest-earning apps. How popular are the gambling games on PlayPhone?
They do exceptionally well. It seems like the players that play in those environments are extremely eager to spend money and keep playing. It's pretty neat. What we're seeing is it's amazing. I'm curious to see how the gambling is going to be affected. As if Apple and Google start to be allowed for real currency gambling. That's kind of the next thing I'm excited to see.
Do you find regulations for gambling games specific to carriers, and how does that compare to, say, Apple or Google Play?
I actually think there's going to be a fairly large appetite for kind of in-app gambling. Right now, we don't allow it. I think Apple and Google right now, they don't allow it, just because I think the regulations, the number of places that currently allow this, I think are fairly few. I think the UK doesn't. I think there's 1 or 2 states that allow it. But right now, we're kind of waiting to kind of see where the chips will fall, so to speak,
if you will. But do you think, future-wise, do you see that becoming something that will become second nature?
I do. I think eventually that's going to become just normal. I think what you're going to see is a lot of developers offer that just as an option. So let's say you're playing in an IGT or a Double Down or Big Fish. I think one of the options you're going to have is play for fun, where you can kind of, as it exists today, where you're playing for virtual currency. I think one of the options you'll have is just play for real money. I think that's just going to be a fairly normal thing here in next 3 to 5 years.
Gotcha. Now, obviously, PlayPhone is suitable primarily for gaming apps, but what about other types of apps?
So initially, we made the decision very early on that we were going to be games only.
Okay.
It's just, if you look at apps versus games are the ones driving a lot of the revenue. Games are the ones driving a lot of the usage. Apps are certainly still there, but as far as making money for developers, it's incredibly difficult to make money on the app side unless you really have your market already cut out for you.
And again, with all of the information being so new and in its infancy for you guys, do you see that becoming something that will be opening up, or do you think the plan to stick right with sort of the games is going to be the direction to go?
I think we're probably going to stick with games. I think the market changes rapidly enough that it's hard enough to stay on top of one category.
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine adding in lifestyle and communications and all. I mean, there's just it's such I mean, talk about we were talking earlier about the number of apps that are available in the store and how that's a discovery issue. I couldn't imagine adding in apps at this point. It just would be a nightmare. It's just so much content.
Yeah. How does your user engagement and revenue per user differ by country? Like in Asia, it's more common for apps to be pre-installed in handsets. How does that affect PlayPhone?
So we work pretty tightly with the operators in each country, because each country is going to be, the user engagement is tied to kind of what's popular in that region. So as we said, casino is very, very popular in the United States. If you move down to Brazil, they're not going to be as popular, but sports games do very, very well down there, or racing games or shooter games. Each kind of genre has its high point in different regions. So we work really closely with our carrier partners in each region because they're going to know their audience best. So we work with those guys and kind of adjust the offering accordingly.
And so, again, it goes back to that localization you talk about being a big
Absolutely.
Success for you.
Yeah, actually, we take it one step further. We don't really consider it localization, because localization to me just says language change. We consider it culturalization, because there's a lot of things you have to take in mind beyond just language.
And you have teams there that you guys work with pretty closely to make sure that you're accommodating the correct way.
Yeah, we work very closely with the carrier partner. Once again, they're going to know their subscriber base a lot better than we ever could. Having kind of boots on the street is the best way to know your audience, and we work very closely with them to kind of take the most advantage of their closeness to their audience.
All right, Scott, we got one final question for you, and that's I'd like you to sort of just look into the future and tell us about the future plans. You guys have any expansion plans going forward, and what are some of the newer features you might be working on?
Yeah, we're extremely busy. As I mentioned kind of earlier, it seems like every week we have an announcement, or we're kind of enabling developers to bring their content out a little bit further. So if I had to take a look into the future, look in my crystal ball, I would say probably the next areas that you're going to see PlayPhone kind of make announcements and reach out into are going to be places like India, Thailand, Australia, China, Middle East, Europe, UK, kind of the regions where we're still growing. What we traditionally try to do is, as we move into a region, we try and lock down 100% or as close to 100% of the subscribers as we can. So going to each operator and kind of enabling that service, kind of a rising tide raises all boats kind of idea. I think those are going to be the areas that I think you're going to see next. We try and move into kind of emerging countries as well as established at the same time. So like I said, I think if I had to make a guess, I would say, China, India, Philippines, Australia, as well as Middle East and Europe.
All right, Scott, I have one final question here. I added it. I apologize. But talk to me like I'm an up-and-coming developer here. What's one bit of advice over this past almost year now that you guys have been doing PlayPhone that you would give to an up-and-coming developer that they need to know about right now getting into the market?
Well, depending on what stage you are in the development of your game, I would say look ahead. Too often we see developers that make their game and then kind of shoehorn in, if they're going to be ad supported or if they're going to do additional distribution, be that through a PlayPhone or through even supporting Apple and Google. I would say look ahead and try and figure that stuff out early. Too often we see developers that make a really fantastic game, and then they kind of shoehorn ads in at the end, and it really looks like a sore thumb. So
yeah,
there's a lot of developers that do a really good job of showing, they roll video ads between levels, and it feels really seamless. And I think that's a better experience.
So from the get-go, from the ground up, if you will, make sure you've got that in mind.
Absolutely. It's much easier to kind of build stuff as you're going and as it feels logical than to try and reopen your code and add things in later.
Well, Scott, for the past 30 minutes, you've given hope to those app developers who have felt hopeless against the big app stores and enlightened them to the possible successes that can be had outside the app norm. Thank you so much for your time, and now you're officially free to go.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to all of you, thank you very much for listening. This has been the App and Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast. Make sure you visit our daily blog, blog.appandtop.com, where you can find all this great information and much, much more every single day. Until next time, I'm Mike Bauer. See ya.
The App and Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast is produced by
AppinTop.com.